Do you like the 80s? Ever thought about cruising Miami in a Ferrari? 80s.
Demolish the Christians, bro. Demolish the Christians. I just demolished the Christians, bro. Meet me in World of Warcraft later for an after party.
So I'm not so much into demolishing and such, but I am an atheist, and I came across your video recently from a friend, and I found some of your argumentation interesting.
Okay.
I had a question regarding epistemology of perception. Are you at all familiar with like the neo-realist tradition, or the more direct realist tradition along the lines of like William James and such, and how they would consider things like logic and stuff within the structure of reality and more functional in a process and not an immaterial entity? And do you have a response to that?
Yes, I am. So I think the problem with this position is that it doesn't account for the things that we need and expect and actually see logic, words, meaning, concepts, math doing, right? So, for example, I don't see how something that's an immaterial invariant thing could be a process. And so if it's not itself a process, or if it's not a social construct, or if it's not itself identical to matter, then what is it? And once we try to identify or reduce any of these things to matter, or when we don't want to give an account for immaterial invariant objects, or we want to say that the mind is identical to matter, we're actually placing ourselves in impossible positions. And so you're welcome to make argumentation along those lines if you want to.
Okay, so what if we conceived of okay, well, first of all, I don't believe in immaterial things, so I can try and conceive of everything materially because that's more parsimonious. But say if we had a sort of definition of mind along the lines of a set of interrelationships between material things, and then we consider things like logic, because obviously I wouldn't say logic's immaterial, I'd say it's a material thing, but it's not an entity, right? Because an entity, there's no like entity, like you couldn't cut open a brain or any sort of reasoning being and find an entity of logic, right? I think we both agree on that. But if you considered things like logic and like experience and all these things that you would label as immaterial, instead of as immaterial entities that exist in some sort of universal category, instead they were just relationships between material entities, or like complex sets of interrelationships between material things. And then you could kind of conceive of it that way. What would you respond to that?
Yeah. So my question would be, and as I was listening to you talk, I wrote down 3 things that I would like you to clarify, if you would. So when you talk about a set of things, and when you talk about relationships, and when you talk about complex sets, when you talk about the things, I assume you mean when you pick out objects in the world, what is the set that classes those set of things?
Okay, well, I guess it would depend on what we're talking about. So let's.
Well, I'm asking you because this is what you said.
Experience, as an example.
Well, I mean, so you said thing. Hold on.
Oh, sorry,
so, are you talking about objects in the world? That's what I assume you mean by things. You said relationships between those things in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what is this thing that you're calling a set of those things?
What is this thing that I'm calling a set of things?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, it's a set of relationships, as in like, okay, because I guess what you're trying to say is you're trying to say.
Okay, so the set is the hold on. So the set is is the relationship.
Sorry?
Is that what you're saying? The set is identical to the relationship?
Well, no, because like you could have a bunch of individual relationships, and then a set of them is just a collection of relationships.
Okay, so when we talk about a series of objects, right, that we're calling a coconut or whatever, you're saying that that is a set of 7 coconuts, right? There's 7 of these things, and that set we're calling coconuts, right?
Kind of. I guess like so for example, if you're looking at numbers and you wanted to find an empirical example of numbers, you could find 7 coconuts and then see the relationship between them of 7 different entities.
Okay, so hold on. So you said the set. So the set is identical to the relationship now in this case, in this example.
I'm not sure I fully understand what you mean, but from
Well,
what I'm hearing,
you
kind of.
said, I thought that's what you said. The set here, in the case of the coconuts, is the relationship between the coconuts. And there's 7 of them.
Right, that would be one set of relationships, sure, yep.
Okay. So 7 is identical to the material components that make up the 7 coconuts?
Identical is not exactly the word I'd use. I would say that's sort of like an instantiation of
Ooh.
that
Oh,
relationship.
so there's a distinction between the set and the individual.
Well, in the sense, like, yes, because there's like an individual example of it, and then you could find that example elsewhere. I don't think there's like
what is instantiated? Because you said you're a materialist.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not actually anything instantiated. I mean, in your mind, you might perceive an instantiation, but in the world, there's nothing instantiated.
Right. Okay. Sorry. I'm probably not going to be using, like, I'm only in like my bachelor's degree level of education, so my use of terminology might not be perfect. So I apologize for that. But in terms of, like, I would consider these sort of relationships to be found within the structure of reality, within the structure of material reality, without a necessity for immaterial reality, in the sense that you can find empirical examples of these different, like,
Okay. So
logical categories.
What is instantiated?
What is instantiate?
Mm-hmm. No. What is instantiated in the 7 coconuts?
The relationship of 7.
Okay. So the set is the relationship.
Sure.
So what's instantiated is identical to the objects there.
It's found within that structure, yeah.
Okay. Where in those molecules do you find 7?
So it's not the thing is, it's not an entity, right? You're not finding like an entity example.
Okay,
You're
so
finding a relationship
instantiated,
between multiple sets
you
of
said
entities.
instantiated. That's a metaphysical term. You said it's in the objects themselves. What is
in the relationship between the objects.
Okay, but
not in, like, it's not an entity, it's a relationship.
Okay, so you're saying that the set is identical to the relationship between the objects.
Not quite.
Okay, but that's what you said, and then you said it was instantiated. So I'm asking you, what's instantiated when what's in front of us is molecules?
Right. So the difference is, like, and maybe I'm not wording it.
So
well,
you think look? Let me ask it this way: the number 7 is literally identical to 7 coconuts.
No, not quite. But it's
Okay,
not
so-
identical to the coconuts. It's the relationship between the coconuts. It's
Okay,
not the
so
entity of the
I
coconuts.
just
it's
asked
the
you if
relationship.
the set was identical to the relationship, and you said yes and no. So what distinguishes those 7 coconuts to the right and the 7 bananas to the left, if 7 is merely a set of relations?
Because of their identity as separate, like, coconuts.
That's begging the question, because I'm asking you you said it's because it's instantiated. Yeah, but it's also instantiated in the 7 bananas on the left. But the number 7, you said the number 7 is identical to the relationship of 7 coconuts. So if it's identical, then it's
the relationship
different.
that could be found within sets of many different 7.
Oh, okay. So it's now you have an instantiation that is not identical to the relationship.
Right.
Okay. So now you refuted yourself. Exactly. Because you said,
Can you explain how I refuted myself? Sorry.
is
I'm
the
just
7
explaining.
coconuts on the left identical to the 7 bananas on the right?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Is the 7 coconuts on the left identical to the 7 bananas on the right?
No.
Okay. So how are they both, quote, 7?
Well, they're 2 different examples of a relationship of 7 different
Okay.
items.
Where's the
They're
7?
2 different types of
Where's
items.
the 7? So they're instantiations of a type or a set, but you said the set was identical to the relationships. But I've given you 2 different sets of 7.
Right, so it would be 2 different examples of 7.
Okay. Examples are instantiations of something higher. Where's the 7? What is the thing that is the same thing between the bananas on the left and the coconuts on the right? You said the relationship. No, again, the relationship is just the 7 things, according to you. So what is shared between those 7 things and the other 7 things?
The amount.
Okay, so right, that's begging the question, because that's the set. That's the number 7.
That experience of.
Yeah. So again, it's right. So that's self-refuting, right? Because you just said that the number 7 is a set that's actually in the world. Now you're saying it's just experience that would be in your mind.
Well, I'd consider mind also to just be a relationship between, say, an organism and its
Okay, but that's not
environment.
going to answer the problem of the 7 coconuts. This just makes it worse for you, because now you're appealing to something that is neither of those things, and we don't even know if you have a way to access the external world, right? I mean, are you aware of that problem in philosophy? That, like, is there?
Well, yeah, I'm okay. So that problem itself would be based off, because I understand you refer a lot to Hume as sort of like the pinnacle example of like the empiricist thought, and obviously he was one of the major proponent of skepticism, right?
Yeah,
So,
and
I
so
guess my
has that
problem
whole
with Hume.
that whole tradition has continued that, right?
Yeah. Well, there is a line of empirical thought that is based off that, because that's sort of takes the framework of like the Cartesian and Kantian sort of indirect representationism of reality, right? So that's all, like, that's built on the fact that, you know, as Galileo kind of laid out, you have primary and secondary properties, and then Descartes would have said that these, you know, secondary properties are radically distinct from the primary, and that exists
Sure. Yeah.
in the mind and
Yeah.
so
Locke
on.
says that
So
too.
that
Right.
Hume based his skepticism on the Cartesian idea that we experience reality indirectly, whereas I wouldn't hold that position. I would hold a position that we do experience
Yeah,
reality.
direct
directly. I would
realism,
hold,
yeah.
like a naive realist position.
It doesn't get you out of the dilemmas, because that you hold that doesn't provide a justification. I mean, I'm glad that you hold that. I believe in a form of realism as well, but that's not the same thing as a justification for the belief in external world. That's a position. What's the justification for that position? And again, that's a different. That's a
parsimonious, simple explanation. Then
okay, but that's a presupposition. So why is just because something is appears to be simple, is it therefore more rational, or the one that we ought to choose?
Because if we chose something that's a more complicated, you know,
That's begging the
explanation
question.
for what we
That's
experienced,
begging the
then that would
question.
just-
That's
you
begging the
could pick an
question. That's
infinite
begging the
amount of
question. That's
complicated
begging the
explanations.
question. Begging the question. How do we know that we ought to choose what's more simple? Because we shouldn't choose what's complex. Begging the question.
How should we? Well, sorry, can you repeat the question?
You have a presupposition that the simple explanation is the one that we ought to choose. What is the justification for that belief and for the ought? And you said because we shouldn't choose complex things.
So the justification for why? Well, I guess that's kind of just repeating myself.
Anyway, look, dude. Where is the number 7 in this transaction? Would you agree that you and I are talking about the number 7 right now?
Yes.
Okay. Is the number 7 in my head identical to the number 7 in your head?
Let me think about.
Are the molecules in my head the same as the molecules in your head?
No, there would be two different.
And you believe the number 7 is identical to molecules? You said it was
I don't
instantiated.
think
You said it was
it's identical
instantiated. You
to
said it was.
molecules. I think it's
You said it was
it's the
instantiated in code.
relationship between the
Nope.
molecules, not the molecules.
And you
themselves.
said the set was identical to the relationship and is identical to the 7 coconuts.
Well, that's the thing. I don't consider it identical. I consider it that you have the entities, like, and you can have a certain amount of entities.
Okay, what's an
and then
entity? Okay, so this is metaphysical language. Where do you get a justification for all this metaphysical baggage that you're using here? Entities?
Okay, so from my understanding, and to be fair, you know, I still have plenty to learn. I'm still learning a lot about this kind of stuff. I would consider that the metaphysics, like I agree that metaphysics is valuable and useful. My question is to be, why does, like, I don't understand the need for immaterial things.
Okay. Is the number 7 is the number 7
the structure of reality?
is the number 7 in my head identical to number 7 in your head?
No, because we have two different experiences of that relationship.
Okay. So what is the common thing between the two experiences? Yeah, exactly.
The sort of like
this is
rule
what
that
you
see within
you
reality
can't.
every time we experience.
That's not an answer. That's not an answer. What is the common thing between what's in my head and your head? Since you just said they're different, but you said 2 minutes ago that we're both talking about the same number 7. This is Philosophy 101, Plato. Did you take a Plato class?
I've read some of Plato, not
Okay.
enough to
So
be
Plato
any
101 would be one in many. Do you know about the problem of the one in many?
No.
All right. So you got cheated in your education. You got
And I would call this a palate cleanser, but it's not. Stuff.
Pride Month means a special time for celebration, celebrating the LGBT lifestyle and choice. So it is a special time for us to share, to talk about LGBT, and to get to know LGBT.
We are committed to inclusion. Our lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender employees and their allies are valued members of this.
Can we get a top security cam of all the gay people walking around NASA, please? Thanks a lot.
Team. You might be wondering, what's an ally?
An ally is
This is like SNL. Like NASA took over Saturday Night Live skits. There's not even a place for satire anymore. It's like, oh, Jim Bob, you should make a skit of something. Too late.
someone who speaks up for equal rights and fair treatment, or someone who simply offers support and encouragement to an
Oh, talk about the gay and support. Can we get clips of supporting encouragement for? Why would it matter where you put your dingle if you're in the very expensive, very secret, very important, high stakes environment called space exploration? It's just they almost like out themselves. They're like, they're out of the closet and not speaking of their sexuality, but that they're outing themselves as being a completely fake agency. They couldn't possibly be dedicated to what their feats, their proclaimed feats are. This is like a social program. This is a social engineering program.
LGBT person.
I'm an ally.
I'm an ally.
I'm an ally.
I'm autistic.
Together, we're an important part of America's multi-user spaceport.
The LGBT community is a vibrant part of the NASA family.
We're basically in Brave New World. I mean, Brave New World's got nothing. You read the first couple chapters, Brave New World, you're like, oh, this is a horror show. I need to go watch a James Lindsay talk. It's not even close. The horror is way worse. The reality is way worse.
It's great to have allies.
Diversity is the one thing we all have in common.
Beaver bumping. She just sign what move did she just sign language?
We celebrate it every day.
I'm out at work. I'm out at work.
I'm out at work.
I'm out of work.
You're out of work.
I am out at work.
I'm gay. I like butt stuff. I like penises. I like balls in my mouth. It's so funny. It's like, what could they possibly be talking about? This is what's interesting. I was on a Discord talk once, a little mini debate, and this guy was arguing, and he was like a right winger too. He was arguing that high schools should have LGBT groups, right? As long as it's, extracurricular or whatever. And we were asking him, it was like me and Zen and some people, we were asking him, well, why would it be okay to have a group that clearly pushes a certain type of sexuality, right? That presents it in the name itself. Why would you allow that to be funded by taxpayers to support some extracurricular group? And when you really think about it, it's like what they're saying is so clear. They're specific. They can't be talking about anything other than their sexual acts. Isn't that bizarre? Like, you'd think some of the progressives themselves would understand that the only association or distinction you're really making with these groups, the Skittles groups, is their sexual activity, their proclivities. How is that possibly relevant to any of the work they do? Spaceballs, yeah.
I am out at work. And we're one NASA family.
I was, I think, like many of us, very confused because
Yeah, it was?
the messages that we get from around us are that, we're supposed to be heterosexual.
I couldn't really define myself as LGBT, T in particular.
You really think these people are creating the future of space engineering? You really think that's happening at NASA? They just happen to be a bunch of confused activists that just, they just happen to be working at NASA.
Until I was in my 20s. It wasn't like I think I'm gay. It
wasn't like I think I'm gay. I was like, I love cock. I mean, it was clear as day. It was self-evident.
No, it's just very simple to say.
I wanted a man inside me. It was simple. It started before I got my NASA badge. And I just want all of you to know, all you children out there who are aspiring astronauts, I just want you to know there was no question about it. I mean, it wasn't my uncle. It couldn't have been that event. It was something else.
I am gay. All you have to say.
It's just becoming the new normal.
I'm able to be an engineer.
You guys remember Sam Hyde did a TED Talk, and how it would be required? It wouldn't just be acceptable to be gay. The bit was that it would be required.
Able to be gay.
Diversity, equality, and inclusion. I encourage.
What kind of shit they got on this guy? Are you kidding me? Ooh, you encourage what?
Each of our family to reflect on ways that we can support our LGBTQ plus colleagues and friends. Our success as...
We got to really support them, you guys. You got to support all their proclivities and all the things they want to do in their life, and all the weird shit that they're doing in the bedroom. We just really got to get out of here. I mean, this is a national agency that spends money into existence and then taxes us to pay it back. Not for... I mean, they're going to eventually make a gay moon. They're going to do a projection on the moon one day. That's just a rainbow moon. I mean, that's in our lifetime. Some sort of weird filter, right? It won't be on the moon. It'll be in between us and the moon. It'll be like, they will do this within 5 years. I'm going to be aggressive with this. 5 years, mark my words, from this day, Monday, 6/24/2024, they will do some sort of drone interference projection. They're going to establish some way for people to see the moon through a lens, and they're going to make a gay moon. Gay moon is on its way. Project, Blue Beam.
As a team relies on our diversity.
It doesn't rely on your diversity. That's a bullshit statement. Can you imagine they were like, we got to really solve this problem of how to, do propulsion and get through the Van Allen belts, right? I could make a meme of this. We got to really figure out a way to get through the Van Allen belts, solve this problem. Have you considered hiring a homosexual?
My pronouns are as varied as the rainbow. I typically go by she, her, but I also go by they, them.
I want you to imagine that it's a gorgeous day and you're on a walk.
Oh, this is the best.
You see your neighbor and they have a new puppy. You've got to walk over and say hello to this giant pawed, floppy-eared pup, and you ask your neighbor, what's his name? Her name is Tadpole. Oh, so sorry, she's adorable, you respond. You're embarrassed, right? You got the dog's gender wrong. The dog probably doesn't care. The owner might. You certainly do in that moment. And we've all been there, right? It's an easy mistake to make, but no big deal. Trust me when I say it's a much bigger deal when referring to a person.
The difference, thanks, good job just completely defeating your own ideology. The difference is, little lady, is that you can look under the dog's body and see if it has a dick. Wait, a cell phone. That means that the gender is tied identically. In the dog reference, it's identical to the sex. All you have to do is look at the dog. You didn't get its gender wrong. You got its sex wrong. You just owned yourself. You're not fooling anyone. You're not a dude. I don't care if you borrowed Bill Nye's, shirt and tie. No one will ever see you as a man.
Because if getting a dog's pronoun right matters that much, getting your friends and coworkers right means a lot more.
It doesn't matter. You can't, the dogs don't, it doesn't matter to get the dog's pronouns right because you can correct it very quickly. It's not ambiguous. You see the little red rocket that comes out? That's when you know it's a dude. That's when you know to call it a he dog. When it doesn't have a dick, you call it a she dog.
I'm excited to learn how to be a better ally to the LGBTQ plus community.
I hope you found today's Pride event inspiring and
wow, I'm inspired.
Feel motivated to become an ally in action. Everyone should be an ally. We need you to.
It's just amazing these people think indoctrination is like some specific, like peculiar to religious. It's just amazing. It's just mind-blowing that these progressives at this level, even some of the LARPing right-wingers who see this as like, oh, it's not a big deal. This level of propaganda that's state-run, this is like at the state level. And they're like, keep that religion out of our government. By the way, has your kid figured out that he can put things in his butthole?
To be an ally. And it's easy to say you'll be an ally, but I challenge you to act like an ally. For more information, please reach out to your center's Office of Diversity and Equal Opportunity.
I mean, this is like this centers of, I mean, what is it called in Brave New World? I forget what it's called. They were like the center, what was it? Someone remind me. In Brave New World, it was like not the district, the ministry of, it was like a ministry of propaganda and a ministry of something else, right? It is so insane. Is this 8 years old? It's just posted again. That would actually be even more alarming.
To learn how you can become an ally in action. You can take the first step this month by sharing Pride Month events with friends and coworkers. Thanks, and happy Pride Month.
The Ministry of Love is from 1984. Okay, makes sense. Sick. Yeah. Get the cops involved. I'm coming out. Absolutely disgusting. Well, moving along. This guy, I won't make this as horrible, but I'll make a quick refutation of this guy. I guess TMM is a big fairly big, 66.9 subs. TMM, it's an atheist channel. Again, I'll just do a real quick. He's doing the argument against the evil thing again. Just gotta address it.
An all good God wouldn't permit suffering in the world.
That's how weak this
The
is.
idea that suffering is bad is a strong intuition that people have, but it's not axiomatic. However, a lot of apologists argue that even atheists have a sense of morality because God has written morality on our hearts, causing needless suffering, and for any omnipotent being, all suffering is needless, because an all-powerful God would have the power to accomplish anything he wants without being reliant on anything. Seems very much to be one of those things that, if there is a God, he has written on.
And there you have it, folks. From TMM himself. His argument is what seems. By the way, it wasn't my argument. That's not my argument. But I love this what seems. Oh, it seems to be. That's not an argument. Not even close.
Onto our hearts. That's why people infer it to be the case. Certainly if God loves us, it's hard to imagine why he would impose unnecessary suffering.
Argument from personal incredulity fallacy on aisle 6. Argument from personal incredulity fallacy on aisle 6. When you wrote all that out and you said it, did it really occur to you as a counter? It's hard to imagine. It's literally like that. That's like the cliche argument from personal incredulity wording. He actually wrote the common way in which a argument from personal incredulity is even stated. He wrote it, and it got by his brain. It got by his mind, and he was like, "Oh, I'll post it."
Upon us. How is that a loving thing to do?
How is that a loving thing to do? Again, what is love? Baby, don't hurt me. Atheists have no position on this. How is it not loving to do something that I can't imagine is not loving? I mean, I'm basically the center of the universe, and I determine based on my feelings that if something happens and I think it's not loving, that's probably not loving. So I'm going to, instead of making an argument, I'm going to ask you a question. How is it not loving? That's like the vegans. How is it not mean to hunt? Do you have an argument?
Do. However, because it's not axiomatically true that suffering is evil, I wouldn't use this argument. Rather, I have a different argument. Premise 1. An omniscient, omnipotent, omnibenevolent being would not do anything that said being declares to be.
I reject premise 1. That needs its own argument. What the hell is wrong with you? Retard sound.
When my mom eats rocks, it's kind of like she goes to La La Land. She doesn't seem to be paying attention to anything going on around her.
Premise 1, which smuggles in a conclusion. An omniscient, omnipotent, omnibenevolent being would not do anything that said being declares to be evil. What? What is evil? What are you talking about? Okay? You got to tell us what evil is if you're going to do an internal critique. It's not what he says or, declares. This is some privation of the standard for good. So what is the standard for good if you're going to use the term evil? So this is not internal. It's just saying what he would do. Okay? The Bible portrays God as doing things that he himself declares to be evil. Therefore, conclusion, the God portrayed in the Bible is either not omnipotent or not omniscient or not omnibenevolent. Oh, he's going to do a scripture too, right? He's going to do his own interpretation of God creates evil thing, right? Okay. It's like what the Sola Scripturis do. There's no argument here. Okay? Stick to the argument from evil, okay? The moment you say something is evil, it necessitates the positive of a good. So otherwise you can't point to evil. So I don't know why these people think they're actually making arguments. That's a good question. When does it become axiomatically true? They can't tell you. They might say when it's in the impossibility of the contrary. But yet, when you bring up that truth is conceptual and precedes the human mind necessarily, because for humans, if truth is descriptive, then it precedes us. Then suddenly it's not axiomatic that truth is conceptual and necessitates a mind.
To be evil. Premise 2. The Bible portrays God as doing things that he himself declares to be evil. Therefore, conclusion, the God portrayed in the Bible is either not omnipotent or not omniscient or not omnibenevolent. Isaiah 45:7 says that God creates evil. I think we can take it as axiomatic that a being which admits to creating evil is not omnibenevolent by definition. I've never heard a rebuttal to this argument that didn't involve some variety of
Oh, you mean you got to appeal to... You're appealing to hermeneutical contortionism, you little snake. The fact that you used Isaiah and assume your interpretation and its consequences of, right? You're not taking a traditional authoritative position on Isaiah. These people are such pig snakes.
Exactly.
Projecting without doing a variety of hermeneutical contortionism. That's literally what you just did. And it's hermeneutics.
Hermeneutical contortionism aimed at convincing us that the Bible doesn't really mean what it plainly says. Typically, they say that the original Hebrew word is better translated as some other term. Although the other terms they propose, like calamity or disaster, as better translations, all have equally pejorative connotations that don't really undermine my argument.
It does undermine your argument. If God creates a world, right, that gives humans free will, and the consequences of their free will is a fallen state of the world, and that includes death and decay and disease and all the things you don't like long airplane trips and hurricanes, then these symptoms, you could say, in a sense, are downstream from a creation. But that's not the same as saying God in the moment creates something called evil. Like, oh, here's this positive thing called evil. Total disaster. Speaking of calamity and disasters, your interpretation of Isaiah and your assumptions you're making show no interest in defining and getting to the bottom of what is meant in Isaiah. You just assume, well, even if it doesn't assume that, we still have calamity or disaster, which still, it doesn't sound right. Okay? So there's a distinction between the symptom in a Christian sense, right, in a Christian worldview, which you have to use. You can't just be a lazy observer from the stands and say, oh, this is what I gather from Christianity. You have to take an authoritative stance. You have to steelman the authoritative stance.
It is still a contradiction to call an entity benevolent if that entity creates those things without needing to.
No, that's also needs its own argument. How is it a contradiction that an all-loving God permits calamity? They always do this. They always, and here's the distinction, and it's subtle. So, I don't entirely blame them for being deliberately dishonest, but a lot of times they are. But to be completely charitable, what they're trying to do is say the nature of God being benevolent must pair up with certain activities. So, for example, if God can't lie, then activity of lying would be a contradiction. So from that attempt, at least they're coming from a place of trying to draw out a contradiction in the nature of a being and the action of a being. But unlike lying, right, it's not a contradiction. They haven't presented a contradiction between God being benevolent and permitting things you don't like. You haven't established that. You're just assuming it because you think being all benevolent means you have to intervene on anything you think is aligned with something you don't like.
Bye.